Hello and welcome. Today we'll be going over reporting for ACA, also known as the Affordable Care Act, for year end. Before we begin with preparing your data, you will need to confirm if you need to file a 1094-C and 1095-C. If you're an applicable large employer, also known as an ALE, where you have more than 50 full-time employees, you are required to file a 1094-C and 1095-C, and you're also required to provide your employees with a copy of their 1095-C. ALEs with less than 250 full-time employees have an option to file their 1094-C and 1095-Cs with the IRS either by mail or electronically, while ALEs with more than 250 full-time employees are required to file electronically. If you are a self-insured employer, you will want to visit the IRS website for self-insured employers for more information regarding your filing requirements. Any further information for filing requirements in general can be found on the IRS website for ACA reporting for employers at www.irs.gov/Affordable Care Act/employers. You will need to prepare your data for ACA reporting, and in order to do so, you will need to make sure to satisfy ACA filing requirements. So you may want to start compiling all of the information you will need to enter into ComputerEase to make the transition as seamless as possible. You will first need to define your insurance plan or plans. For all offered plans, you will need to know what the start dates are, the minimum coverage offered, and the premiums for all levels of coverage for each category of coverage. Next, you will want to define your standard measurement period and your standard stability period and when each one begins and ends. You will then need to categorize each employee you have in ComputerEase as either full-time, part-time, or variable hourly and the date that status took effect. Additionally, for the information you should already have on file for your employees, meaning their name, social security number, address, and phone number, you will need to know which plans they were offered for each month. This information may be the same for all the months, just so you're aware. And this information is reported on Form 1095-C on line 14 and is categorized by offer code. Lastly, you will need to know the employee's share of the lowest cost monthly premium for self-only minimum value coverage, as well as if any Section 4980H safe harbor codes can be applied in any month during the year for each employee. For the latest information on Forms 1094-C and 1095-C, please see the instructions given for them on the IRS website. Once you are prepared and have gathered all the information you will need for ACA, you will then need to enter the data into ComputerEase, starting with creating ACA categories. The ACA category is used to track the standard measurement period information, and you'll need to create at least one in ComputerEase. If you only have one standard measurement period, which will be typical for most companies, then you will only need one ACA category, but you can create more if need be. To create a ACA category, you will need to go to Payroll System, Maintenance Programs, ACA Maintenance, Edit ACA Categories. On the Edit ACA Categories dialog box, enter a category code up to 12 alphanumeric characters to define your ACA category and click OK. Then enter the description of your ACA category. Then in the measurement start date column, you'll double-click the row with new in parentheses to create a new measurement period associated with this ACA category, which will then generate the category information window. In that window, you will want to enter the start date of your standard measurement period, as this is the date you want to start tracking ongoing variable hours employee hours. An ongoing employee is an employee that has been employed for at least one complete standard measurement period. You'll then enter the length of your standard measurement period in months, as this is used to determine if variable hour or part-time employees are considered full-time, and it's typically 3 to 12 months. The standard measurement period end date field will automatically populate with the calculated end date of your standard measurement period based on what was previously entered. Next, you will enter the length of your standard administrative period in months, as this is the period of time between the time that your standard measurement period ends and your stability period begins. Please note that the purpose of the standard administrative period is to allow employers time to total and average the hours of service of each employee during the standard measurement period, to be able to notify those eligible employees, explain coverage available under the plan, answer any questions, collect materials from employees, and enroll employees who elect coverage before day one of the standard stability period. This period is not allowed to exceed 90 days, so 3 months. It may not cause a gap in coverage, nor can it reduce or lengthen the standard measurement or standard stability periods. Next, we have the stability period start date and end date fields. Those fields will automatically fill with the calculated start and end dates of your stability period based on what was entered in previously. For employees who were considered full-time, so either working an average minimum of 30 hours per week or at least 130 hours a month, during the standard measurement period, they should be offered health coverage for the entire standard stability period, regardless of actual hours worked during the period's time frame, unless they cease to be employed by the employer. And the standard stability must be at least 6 consecutive calendar months and cannot be shorter than the measurement period. For employees who were part-time during the measurement period, the stability period cannot be longer than the measurement period. So for example, if the standard measurement period is 12 months, the standard stability period must be at least 12 months. If the standard measurement period is only 6 months, the standard stability period must be at least 6 months. Even if the standard measurement period was only 3 months, the standard stability period must be at least 6 months. The 6-month and 12-month examples given here would be the same for both part-time and full-time employees, but if the standard measurement period was only for 3 months, the standard stability period for part-time employees could not be more than 3 months. Lastly, for the initial measurement and administrative period length fields, you'll want to enter the length of your initial measurement period and your initial administrative period in months. Please be aware that for newly hired employees who are not reasonably expected to be full-time on the date of hire, the initial measurement period applies until they become ongoing employees. The initial measurement period begins on the date of hire or the first day of the next month, and for the initial administrative period, it can also not exceed 90 days, and the total combined time of the initial administrative period and the initial measurement period cannot exceed 13 months plus a portion of another month. You'll click OK to save the entered information, and going forward, each time your measurement period is renewed, you can go back in and edit your category and double-click on the new row to add new information. The information will pre-fill based on information entered previously, with the assumption that your standard measurement period, stability period, and administrative period will remain unchanged, and your new start dates will be based on the end of the old dates. You would only need to make changes if you decide on administrative changes. Next, you'll need to create your ACA plan, and just like categories, you will need to create at least one in ComputerEase. The ACA plan is used to track the start date of your plan and the employee's share of the lowest cost monthly premium for self-only minimum value coverage. You need to create one plan for each combination of these two that you have. So if you have two separate plans that you offer to different employee groups, even if they begin on the same date, you will need to create two plans in ComputerEase. To create an ACA plan, it'll be the same steps as when you're creating an ACA category, right up until you double-click New under Start Date, which will generate the plan information window. You'll enter the start date of the plan, as well as what the share value will be for the employee's share of lowest cost monthly premium for self-only minimum value coverage, and then click OK to save your ACA plan. Going forward, each time the plan is renewed, you will need to edit the plan and double-click on the new row to add a renewal with a new start date and new employee share of premium. Moving on to entering the employee information for ACA, if you are an ALE, you will need to enter some additional information for each employee in order to report this information from ComputerEase. To do so, you will need to go to the ACA maintenance as you had for ACA categories and plans and click on Edit Employee ACA Information. It will prompt a dialog box to select an employee for whom you want to edit ACA information for and click OK. The first tab will be the Status and History tab. For initial setup on an employee, you'll just need to click on New Employment Status, where you will then select the ACA category, plan, employment type of whether that's full-time, part-time, variable hour, or no ACA, an effective date of when the previously entered information became effective. Please be aware that if you're not an ALE, then no ACA would apply for all employees, and that any time there is a change to the information above, you must enter new information. The look back, start, and end date fields will only have information display if an employee has their employment type listed as variable hour. Both fields are calculated automatically based on the information entered in the previous fields. The look back start date should be 1 month after the effective date, and the end date should be the end date of the standard measurement period of the employee's ACA category. For the look back status, you will need to choose what you believe this employee's status to be at that time, which would be either full-time, part-time, or unknown. At the end of the look back period, you will be able to use the ACA variable hour employee status report to help determine the employee's calculated status. Once you click OK, it will generate the information in the date and item columns under the Status and History tab. If you are updating an employee who had ACA information previously entered, such as changing an employee from full-time to part-time or vice versa, you can use the New Employment Status to add a new status. Selecting New Plan and/or New Category will allow you to add a new ACA plan and category for the employees with new effective dates. If there are any items in the Status and History tab that just needs to be edited, you'll just need to click on the item to highlight it and click Edit Current Selection to edit them, then click OK. If any of them need to be deleted, you will highlight the item and click on Delete Current Selection and then click Yes to delete the highlighted item. The next tab will be the Offer of Coverage, also known as OOC codes. The year field will populate with the current year, but you can change that to a different year for which you need to enter data. You'll then choose the applicable offer of coverage code for each month. Whichever code you choose for each month, the following months will populate with that same code, and this is what will generate on Form 1095-C for the employees. For OOC codes of 1L, 1M, or 1N, you will need to enter the employee's primary residence zip code, and for OOC codes of 1O, 1P, or 1Q, you'll need to enter the employee's primary employment zip code, Affordability Safe Harbor. Next, enter in the applicable section 4980H Safe Harbor code for each month, and the codes will populate in the same manner as the OOC codes and will generate on line 16 of Form 1095-C for the employees. On the Covered Individuals tab, just like the Offer of Coverage tab, the year will default to the current year, and it can be changed as well. No other information will need to be entered on this tab unless you check off the employer-provided self-insured coverage. If you do check that box, you will need to enter the first, middle, and last name, any name suffix, social security number, and birth date for everyone covered for the employee. Then select the checkbox or boxes corresponding to the months they were covered. Click OK to save the employee information. Now we can move on to ACA reports, which can be found in Payroll System, Reports, Tax Reporting, ACA Reports. You'll want to start with the ACA FTE count. This report is designed to help you determine the number of full-time and full-time equivalent employees you employ during a given time frame. Each calendar year, this report can help you determine your ALE status, as well as each employee's full-time or part-time status. Unlike other payroll reports, which are based on pay date, this report is based on work date. If you do not enter the date worked, for example, for salaried employees, this will be estimated based on payroll ending date. To run the ACA FTE count, you will need to enter in the ending month for which you want to run the report, the number of months you want to report your hours, whether you would like a detailed report that lists each employee and their hours worked each month, or a summary that just gives total count of full-time and full-time equivalent employees, and how you would like that report generated, such as to display, a printer, emailed, or to the clipboard. Then click OK. For the purposes of counting full-time employees, the ACA defines any employee who works at least 130 hours per month as full-time. However, when calculating full-time equivalent employees, only the first 120 hours an employee works is used when calculating FTEs. For all employees working less than 130 hours in a month, all hours less than 120 per employee are totaled and divided by 120 to determine the number of full-time equivalent employees that those employees represent when determining whether or not your business is an ALE, which can be seen in the example here. Next report is the ACA Variable Hour Employee Status Report. As previously mentioned, this report is designed to help you determine the status of any variable hour employees at the end of the measurement period. You'll enter the date through which you want to report weekly average hours and calculated status for each variable hour employee, and then select how you would like the report to generate. An example of the report can be seen here. Last report to print will be the ACA Employee Type Report, and it's used to determine how each employee is currently classified for ACA reporting purposes. It's ran the same as when you run the ACA Variable Hour Employee Status Report, with the exception that employee status can change depending on the date entered in the As Of field, that you can either select specific employees in the Employees fields or leave it blank to run on all employees, and that you can choose on whether to see all employee status or just have the report run on just active or just inactive employees. You'll click OK to run the report. And please note, if you see an employee listed as unknown in the report and the report was ran for a current or later date, you will want to check their employee ACA information to ensure they have been set up for ACA before you move on to printing the forms. Now we'll go on to printing the forms. For ACA reporting, these are one of the forms where ComputerEase does print out the actual forms, so you will not need to purchase forms to print on. We'll start with the 1094-C, as that's the cover sheet for the 1095-C that you'll need to submit to the IRS. You will want to print the form by going to Payroll System, Reports, Tax Reporting, ACA Reports, Print 1094-C form. The year field will default to the current year, but change it to whichever year you need it to be if it's not the default. Then in parts 1 and 2, you will want to enter the name of whoever is going to be the point of contact for the 1095-C forms. The number of forms 1095-C submitted with this form will default to the number of forms calculated based on ALE information entered. You can change it if you intend to submit a different number of 1095-C forms to the IRS. Select yes or no if this is going to be the authoritative transmittal, and please be aware that each company must send at least one authoritative transmittal. So if you're filing multiple 1094C forms, you should choose yes only when the form you are printing is the authoritative transmittal. The total number of forms 1095C filed is the same as the number of forms 1095C submitted with this form field, and it can be adjusted to a different number if applicable. And if you're a member of an aggregated group, meaning that this company is one of multiple companies that can be combined and treated as one company for the purposes of determining ALE status per the IRS code, you will want to choose yes on the member of aggregated ALE group drop-down option. Otherwise, select no. And then on the certificate of eligibility, you'll select the appropriate boxes as they apply, meaning you can choose more than one if applicable. Just be aware that the qualifying offer method transition relief and Section 4980H transition relief are no longer available as of 2017 tax year, so they will appear as grayed out options for all years after 2017 as of currently. On Part 3, you will select yes or no for the minimal essential coverage offer option if you did or did not offer minimal essential coverage either for all 12 months or each month with their appropriate response if they are different by month. The full-time employee count and total employee count will populate with the employee count based on information entered into ComputerEase. If your data differs, for example, part of the year payroll was done outside of ComputerEase, you can change it per month in each column. If you choose yes in Parts 1 and 2 tab that you are a member of an aggregated ALE group, you can check the box indicating that you are a member for either all 12 months or per month if different by month. As previously mentioned, if you're printing this form for years after 2017, the Section 4980H transition relief indicator will also be grayed out and unable to be used, so please disregard for that section for all years 2017 and higher. Part 4 tab will only be available to enter information into if you had selected that you are a member of an aggregated ALE group on the Parts 1 and 2 tab. You will list the other members of the aggregated group, giving their name and EIN of each, in descending order, starting with the member with the highest average monthly number of full-time employees. If there are more than 30 members of the aggregated ALE group, only enter the 30 with the highest monthly average number of full-time employees, as 30 is the max capacity of listing members of the aggregated ALE group. After all parts are completed as required, click OK to print the 1094C form. Then you can move on to printing the 1095C forms. With the exception of Part 3, ComputerEase prints the completed 1095C forms using the information entered into the ACA maintenance programs. To print the 1095Cs, you'll want to do the same as you had done for the 1094C form. The year field will also default to the current year, but you can change it to whichever year you need. Choose whether or not you would like the instructions to be printed for each form, and if you want it to show the entire Social Security numbers or just have it display the last 4. If you're not pulling it for specific employees, you can leave the employees field blank to print forms for all employees and then generate the reports. Please note that if any employee with a status other than no ACA during the year indicated are missing any necessary information, a page will print indicating any errors, such as missing offer of coverage codes, etc. You'll want to correct the errors prior to printing your forms, and keep in mind that when you're reviewing the forms, that line 15 will only have a value for line 14 values of 1B, 1C, 1D, or 1E. If you own the Employee Hub module, you will have the option to upload the 1095C forms to the Employee Hub website for your employees to have digital access to their forms versus having to print them out for them. You will not see this option under ACA reports if you do not own the Employee Hub module. To upload the 1095C forms to the Employee Hub, it will be the exact same process as if you were printing the forms, minus the actual printout of the forms, and same exact stipulations apply. If there are no issues, you will see a status dialog box pop up stating that it's running the 1095C, which will automatically close when it's done running. Here is an example of where the employees can access their 1095C forms digitally through the Employee Hub website. Once the forms are uploaded, employees can log in at hub.computerease.com using their credentials to view and download their documents. Last thing to go over is exporting the 1094C and 1095C forms for electronic filing. As a reminder, electronic filing is required by the IRS for an employer with more than 250 full-time employees that they are filing 1095Cs for. Employers with less than 250 full-time employees, filing electronically is optional. Whether you are required to file electronically or choosing to, electronic filers are required to use the ACA Information Return System, also known as AIR, to file electronically. And just like the other items in ACA reports, the year will default to the current year, but you can change that to which year you are needing to export for. Once you click OK, it will bring you to the next dialog box. If this is your first year filing electronically or at least didn't file electronically in the previous tax year, there are a few things you will need to complete in accordance with IRS Publication 5164 and Publication 5165 before trying to export the 1094C and 1095Cs and then filing electronically. You will first need to determine who the responsible individuals and contacts who will handle the electronic filing, that you are registered for e-services with the IRS through the IRS website, that you've completed an application for Transmitter Control Code, or TCC, if you act as an issuer, a software developer, and/or a transmitter, and that you have conducted ACA Assurance Testing System, also known as AATS testing, which is, to put it simply, it's a test file that has been submitted to the IRS. To create a test file for AATS testing, you will click on the Make Test File button, which you will then enter the transmitter control code you were assigned by the IRS in the Export 1094C, 1095C dialog box. Click OK, and then two files will be sent to the clipboard, a 1094C manifest file and a 1094C request file. You'll save those two files and upload them to the ACA Information Return System. Please be aware that it typically takes 48 hours or more for the IRS to approve your test file submission and then move it from test status to production status. It is very important that you do not attempt to upload an actual submission to the production portion of the ACA Information Return System until this occurs. If you electronically submitted your ACA information in the previous tax year, you do not need to go through the steps required by IRS Publication 5164 and Publication 5165, nor will you have to do a test file, so all you will need to do is prepare your export file. If you had to do a test file submission and received confirmation from the IRS that the test submission was approved, you can then move on to preparing the export. When you click on Prepare button, you will go through the exact same steps that you would have done for printing the 1094C form, parts 1 through 4, which the steps for that can be found earlier in this training video. After you have finished preparing the export for the 1094C, 1095Cs, you can click on Export and then enter the transmitter control code so that the data can be submitted to the IRS. And just like with the test file, a 1094C manifest file and a 1094C request file will generate and be sent to your clipboard in ComputerEase, which you will want to save those files and upload them to the ACA Information Return System. Once the files have been submitted to the ACA Information Return System, you'll click on Enter Receipt. You'll then enter the receipt ID that was given to you upon submission and click OK. Make sure you enter in the receipt ID exactly as it was given. Otherwise, you will get an error that states the receipt ID is not in the expected format, and it will want you to confirm if you want to continue or not. After submitting your manifest and request files, check the AIR website for a status update on your submission, which can take a few hours or more for the IRS to provide a status update. You can close the update status dialog box while you wait for that update. When you have that update, you will then want to go back into ComputerEase, Payroll System, Reports, Tax Reporting, ACA Reports, export 1094C, 1095C information, and re-enter the year you had used for exporting and update the status. It'll bring up the submission status window that gives the option of accepted, accepted with errors, or rejected, and you will select the option that the IRS had provided and click OK. How you can proceed further is dependent on the status option given by the IRS that was chosen on the submission status screen. If your submission was accepted with no errors, you will see that the original data was marked accepted after you click OK on the submission status screen. If you need to, though, you will still have the option to correct the 1094C and or the 1095Cs after completing the process. If your submission was accepted with errors, you will see that the data was marked as such and that the errors will need to be corrected. You can download the error file from the AIR website and upload the file through View Errors to see which employees need to be corrected, and then you can correct the 1094C form and or the 1095s. Then you will have to export the correct files and go through the steps of entering the receipt ID from the corrected files upload and then update the status again. Lastly, if you received a rejected status from the IRS, you will need to re-prepare your export and go through the same steps as you had to do with the original export files. Once you have received a status from the IRS of accepted with no errors, you are considered to have completed the process of exporting the 1094Cs and the 1095Cs electronically to the IRS and will have to do nothing further unless you choose to correct files. Thank you for attending this training. For more information, please review the year-end resources within the Deltek Support Center.